Life before the betrayal felt like a well-rehearsed play. Everything was in its place and I was content. My name is Mark, and I had built a life that, at least on the surface, seemed enviable. My wife, Lisa, was the center of my universe. We met in college, bonding over our shared love for art and film. Our late-night discussions about our dreams and aspirations felt like the foundation of a beautiful future. After 5 years of marriage, we had built a cozy home in a small town, filled with laughter, love, and the occasional bickering over who left the dishes in the sink. Life had its ups and downs, but on most days, it felt like we were on the same page. Lisa was vibrant and full of life, the kind of person who could light up a room with her smile. I admired her passion for her work as a graphic designer. She had a knack for creativity that I found inspiring. We shared countless moments, from spontaneous road trips to quiet evenings on the couch, watching our favorite shows. Yet, as I reflect on those times, I realize there were signs I had overlooked, subtle changes in her demeanor that I brushed off as stress from work. She started spending more time on her phone, often giggling or whispering when I entered the room. I chalked it up to her newfound friendship with a group of online influencers she had met through work. I remember one night, she came home late from a networking event, her cheeks flushed and her eyes sparkling with excitement. I thought nothing of it, believing she was simply caught up in the thrill of her job. But looking back, I can see how those late nights became more frequent, how her laughter started to sound different, and how our intimacy began to fade. I dismissed it all, telling myself that life was busy and we were just in a phase where we needed to reconnect. Then came the day everything changed. I was sitting in my office, working on a project, when I heard her laughter from the living room. It was a sound I adored, but this time it felt different, louder, more animated. Curiosity piqued. I walked out to see Lisa sitting on the couch, her phone in hand, a wide grin plastered on her face. On the screen was a video of a well-known YouTuber, Jake Reynolds, a name I had heard her mention a few times but didn't think much of. He was famous for his outrageous pranks and humorous commentary, and I could see why she was captivated. But there was something else in her eyes, something that sent a chill down my spine. As the days passed, I found myself increasingly uneasy. I began to notice the little things, the way she would smile at her phone, the way she would rush to silence it whenever I walked into the room, the lingering scent of cologne that wasn't mine on her clothes. I wanted to trust her, to believe that everything was fine, but a nagging feeling settled in my gut. I knew I had to confront this feeling, but I wasn't prepared for the discovery that awaited me. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when I stumbled upon the truth. I was cleaning up our bedroom, and there, lying innocently on her nightstand, was her phone. It buzzed and a message popped up: "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible." My heart dropped. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling, and opened the message. The sender was Jake Reynolds. The world around me faded as I read the exchange, flirty banter, hints of secret meetups, and declarations that made my stomach churn. I felt the ground shift beneath me, and for the first time I understood the weight of betrayal. My mind raced through memories, searching for answers, trying to make sense of it all. The laughter, the late nights, the secrets, it all clicked into place, and I was left standing in a storm of heartbreak and disbelief. I confronted Lisa that evening, and the look on her face when I showed her the messages was one I would never forget. It was a mix of shock, guilt, and a hint of defiance. I wanted to scream, to cry, to lash out, but instead I felt a cold numbness wash over me. I had trusted her, loved her, and now she was sitting across from me, the woman I thought I knew, transformed into someone unrecognizable. As I navigated through the haze of emotions, anger, sorrow, confusion, I realized my life was about to change forever. I had to make a choice: to let this betrayal define me or to take back control. A storm was brewing inside me, and I would not let it pass without making my voice heard. The confrontation was a whirlwind of emotions. I sat across from Lisa, the sunlight fading outside, casting shadows in our once happy home. My heart raced as I struggled to find the right words. How could you do this? I finally managed to ask, my voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and anger. Her initial reaction was a look of horror, but it quickly morphed into something else, defensiveness. "Mark, I never meant for you to find out this way," she said, her voice shaking. "It was just a fling, it didn't mean anything to me." The words felt like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. I had expected an apology, perhaps even a glimmer of remorse, but instead I was faced with an explanation that only added salt to the wound. "Just a fling," I echoed, incredulous. "You think that makes it okay? You were in love with him, weren't you? You were laughing and texting him behind my back while I was here, thinking we were fine." I felt the heat of anger rising within me, a fire fueled by betrayal and confusion. I had always believed our love was strong enough to weather any storm, but here I was, drowning in a sea of deceit. Lisa's expression shifted, and for a brief moment I saw vulnerability. "It was a mistake, Mark. I got caught up in the excitement. He's charismatic, and I never meant for it to go this far." The way she said his name made my skin crawl. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had poured my heart and soul into our marriage, and she had chosen a moment of excitement over everything we had built together. "Charismatic. Is that really what you want to tell me? You think a few laughs and a few late-night texts justify this?" My voice was rising now, the hurt spilling over into rage. "You've destroyed everything we had for a guy who makes videos for a living. Do you even realize how ridiculous this all is?" Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it vanished as quickly as it came. I was caught between my love for her and the betrayal that had shattered my trust. "I can't believe you would throw away our life for a YouTuber. What did you think would happen? That we could just pretend this never happened?" Lisa's defenses crumbled and she broke down, sobs racking her body. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think it would go this far. It was supposed to be fun, just a distraction. I love you, Mark." The words hung in the air, heavy with irony. How could she say she loved me while having an affair? "You don't even know what love is," I spat, the bitterness of my words tasting like poison. "You don't love me if you can do this to me." The room felt suffocating, the silence between us growing louder. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed air, space to think. I walked out of the house and into the cool night, the city lights twinkling around me like a cruel reminder of what I had lost. I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. As I walked aimlessly, my mind raced with thoughts of revenge. I was furious, and the idea of letting this slide felt impossible. I had to do something. The prospect of confronting Jake Reynolds, the man who had stolen my wife, flickered in my mind. I could imagine his smug face, the way he would laugh off my anger, the way he would dismiss my pain as nothing more than collateral damage in his quest for fame. But how could I expose him? The thought of creating a takedown video began to take shape in my mind. I had seen the power of social media, how quickly a narrative could spread, how one video could change everything. I could show the world who he really was, a man who preyed on vulnerable women for views and clicks, a man who had no respect for the sanctity of marriage. The idea felt intoxicating. I could turn my pain into power, and in doing so, I could regain some semblance of control over my life. I knew that I had to act quickly before Lisa could spin her own narrative, before she could manipulate the story to make herself the victim. I would not allow that to happen. That night I returned home, my heart heavy but my resolve stronger than ever. I looked at Lisa, who was still crying, and I felt a mixture of pity and anger. "This isn't over," I said, my voice low but firm. "You've made your choice, and now I'm going to make mine." Her eyes widened in fear, but I didn't care. I had a plan forming in my mind, and I was determined to see it through. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of the world on my shoulders, I could already envision the video I would create. A viral takedown that would expose Jake for who he truly was. I was ready to unleash my revenge. The days following my confrontation with Lisa were a blur of emotions, anger, sadness, and a newfound determination. I was consumed by the idea of making a takedown video. It was the only way I could think of to reclaim my dignity and expose Jake Reynolds for the fraud he was. I began to plan meticulously, piecing together what I would say and how I would present the evidence I had gathered. I started by researching Jake's online presence. He had millions of followers, a charismatic persona that drew people in, and a lifestyle that seemed almost too perfect. I watched his videos trying to understand his appeal. The more I watched, the more disgusted I became. He was a master manipulator, using his charm to exploit his audience and apparently women like Lisa. I felt a surge of anger each time I saw him flashing that smug smile, knowing that it had been that very smile that had lured my wife into his web. I knew I needed to find concrete evidence of his behavior. I spent hours combing through his social media, looking for any signs of his true character. I stumbled upon clips where he mocked his fans, belittled those who disagreed with him, and made light of serious issues. It was all there, hidden beneath layers of humor and charisma. I began to compile clips, screenshots, and messages that would serve as the backbone of my video. As I worked late into the nights, I felt a sense of purpose. I was no longer just a heartbroken husband. I was a man on a mission. I set up a small recording space in my home office, surrounded by my computer and camera gear. The first time I stood in front of the camera, I felt a mix of nerves and adrenaline. I had never done anything like this before, but the thought of exposing Jake pushed me forward. I recorded my first take, pouring my heart out about the betrayal I had experienced. I talked about my love for Lisa, how I had trusted her, and how Jake had taken advantage of that trust. I found myself speaking with raw emotion, my voice trembling as I recounted the pain of discovering their affair. But as I reviewed the footage, I realized it needed more. It needed to be impactful, something that would resonate with viewers and make them question Jake's character. I decided to incorporate commentary on the toxic culture surrounding influencers and the normalization of infidelity in the digital age. I wanted my video to be more than just a personal vendetta. I wanted it to spark a conversation. I began to weave in statistics about infidelity and its effects on relationships, aiming to highlight the broader implications of Jake's actions. However, as I delved deeper into the project, I faced challenges. I started receiving messages from Lisa, pleading for forgiveness, promising it would never happen again. Each message tugged at my heart, but I couldn't allow myself to be swayed. I had to stay focused on my goal. I couldn't let her manipulation derail my revenge. I felt a strange mix of guilt and resolve. I loved her, but the betrayal felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. As I gathered the final pieces of my video, I reached out to some friends who had experience in video editing and social media. I shared my story with them, explaining my plan. They were supportive, encouraging me to go through with it. One friend even helped me refine the editing process, ensuring the pacing was just right to keep viewers engaged. After several late nights of editing, I finally had a rough cut of the video. I watched it over and over, tweaking the tone and pacing, making sure it conveyed the anger and hurt I felt. I included clips of Jake's most egregious moments, interspersed with my commentary about the effects of infidelity on trust and relationships. I wanted to make it clear that this wasn't just about revenge, it was about accountability. The day I was ready to upload the video felt surreal. I sat in front of my computer, my heart racing. I had never shared anything so personal before, but I knew I had to do it. I took a deep breath and clicked upload. As the video processed, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. What if it didn't resonate? What if I was just a heartbroken man trying to lash out? But as the video went live, I started to see the views trickle in. I watched the comments begin to populate, a mix of support and criticism. Some people empathized with my situation while others questioned my motives. But one thing was clear, the video was gaining traction. Within hours, it had gone viral, and I could hardly believe the whirlwind I had unleashed. As I watched the views climb, a sense of vindication washed over me. I was no longer just the victim of an affair. I was taking control of my narrative. But along with that feeling came a creeping sense of dread. What would Jake's reaction be? Would he respond? I knew that I had opened a Pandora's box, and there was no going back now. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of notifications. My video was trending and news outlets were picking up the story. I felt a mix of exhilaration and anxiety. I had done it. I had exposed Jake Reynolds, and now the world would see him for who he really was. But as the reality of my actions set in, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The aftermath of my video going viral was a whirlwind. Overnight, I had transformed from an ordinary husband into a figure of public interest. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, likes, comments, shares, and messages from people who had seen my video. Some were supportive, offering words of encouragement and sharing their own stories of betrayal. Others were less kind, accusing me of seeking fame or trying to ruin Jake's life for my own gain. I read each comment, my heart racing with every new notification, feeling a mix of validation and anxiety. Within a few days, I noticed that the media had caught wind of my story. News outlets were reaching out for interviews, wanting to hear my side of the affair and how I had exposed Jake. I felt a strange sense of power as I spoke to reporters, sharing my experience and the emotions that drove me to create the video. There was something cathartic about telling my story, about reclaiming my narrative in a world that had felt so out of control. But with this newfound attention came fear. I was acutely aware of Jake's influence and the potential backlash I might face. I couldn't shake the image of him standing in front of his camera, smirking as he dismissed my claims. I had no doubt he would retaliate. The thought of him crafting a response video filled me with dread. Would he spin the story to make me look like the bad guy? Would he attempt to discredit my video, downplay my pain, and paint himself as the victim? One evening, I was sitting in my living room, scrolling through social media when I found a post from Jake. He had finally responded. The video was titled "Mark's Viral Attack: The Truth Behind the Lies." I felt my heart drop as I clicked it open, bracing myself for whatever he had to say. As I watched, I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. Jake was attempting to turn the narrative around, portraying himself as the innocent party in this drama. He claimed that my video was a desperate attempt to gain attention and that Lisa had never been serious about our relationship. Mark is just a guy who couldn't handle the fact that his wife was bored with their mundane life and sought excitement, he said with a smirk, leaning back in his chair as if he were discussing a trivial matter. I'm not the villain here, I'm just a guy having fun, and if you think I'm going to apologize for that, you're mistaken. His words felt like a slap in the face, and I could feel the rage bubbling inside me. He was trying to paint me as the jealous husband who couldn't accept his wife's choices. I wanted to scream at the screen, to confront him, and tell him that he had crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. But I knew that reacting impulsively wouldn't help my case. I needed to stay composed. Instead, I decided to respond with a video of my own. I took a deep breath, knowing that I had to counter his narrative without losing my cool. I wanted to show the world that I wasn't just a man seeking revenge. I was a husband who had been deeply hurt and betrayed. I crafted a response video where I addressed Jake's claims, but I also focused on the broader implications of infidelity and the responsibility we have to our partners. I spoke from the heart, detailing how his actions had affected my life and my marriage. I shared my feelings of betrayal and heartbreak, emphasizing that this wasn't just about me. It was about the impact of infidelity on relationships and the way society often glorifies such behavior. I wanted to shift the focus away from our personal drama and highlight the lessons that could be learned from it. As I uploaded the response video, I felt a sense of clarity. I was no longer just reacting. I was taking control of the narrative. I was using my platform to address something that mattered, something that could resonate with others who had faced similar betrayals. The response video quickly gained traction, and I felt an overwhelming sense of support from the community. Many viewers praised my honesty and vulnerability, and I began to receive messages from people who had been through similar experiences. I realized that my story was not just about revenge. It was about healing and finding strength in vulnerability. However, amidst the support, I couldn't ignore the dark side of this newfound attention. Jake's fans began to flood my comments with hate, calling me names and defending their idol. I had expected backlash, but the vitriol was overwhelming. It felt like a storm brewing, and I was caught in the eye of it. I also had to confront Lisa again. She had been watching the fallout from the sidelines, and I could see the guilt etched on her face as she tried to navigate her role in this chaos. One evening, we sat down together, the air thick with tension. "Mark, I never wanted this to happen," she said, her voice trembling. "I made a terrible mistake, and I'm so sorry." I looked at her, torn between the anger I still felt and the remnants of love that lingered. "You need to understand that this isn't just about us anymore, Lisa. This is bigger than both of us." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. "You have to take responsibility for your actions. I can't be the only one fighting this battle." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know, I've been selfish, and I'm so sorry for everything. I want to fix this." But could it be fixed? I didn't want to make any rash decisions, but I also knew that our relationship had been irrevocably altered. Trust was shattered, and the love we once shared felt like a distant memory. I needed time to think, to figure out what I truly wanted. As the dust settled from our confrontation, I found myself at a crossroads. The attention from my videos had opened doors, but it had also forced me to confront painful truths. I was on a path of self-discovery, and while I had initially sought revenge, I realized that healing was the true goal. The battle was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came next. I had exposed Jake, but now I had to confront the reality of my own life and the choices that lay ahead. As the dust settled from my response video and the media frenzy continued, I found myself grappling with the aftermath of my actions. The whirlwind of attention had created a strange dichotomy in my life. On one hand, I was gaining support from viewers who resonated with my story, while on the other I was losing pieces of my old life, including my relationship with Lisa. In the weeks that followed, I focused on navigating this new reality. I had to confront the truth that, while I had exposed Jake Reynolds, I was still left with the mess of my marriage. Lisa had been trying to reach out, sending me messages filled with remorse and longing, but I was hesitant to respond. I needed space to process everything that had happened and to figure out what I truly wanted. The viral attention from my videos had opened doors I never expected. I began receiving offers from media outlets to share my story, and even some companies reached out for potential collaborations. It was surreal. I was still reeling from the betrayal, yet at the same time I felt a sense of empowerment. I had taken control of my narrative and people were listening, but with the attention came an unsettling reality. Jake's fans were relentless, bombarding my social media with hate comments and threats. They saw me as the villain in their narrative, and I found myself in a constant battle to defend my character. It was exhausting, and I began to question whether exposing him was worth the toll it was taking on my mental health. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of online harassment, I sat alone in my living room, staring blankly at the wall. I felt drained, both emotionally and physically. It was then that I received a call from a reporter who wanted to do an in-depth interview about my experience. I hesitated before agreeing. I wanted to share my story, but I was also wary of how it would be portrayed. Would they sensationalize it? Would they focus solely on the drama? As I prepared for the interview, I knew I had to stay focused on the message I wanted to convey. I wanted to highlight the importance of trust and the devastating impact of infidelity, not just for me, but for anyone who had experienced betrayal. I wanted to encourage others to speak out and reclaim their narratives, just as I had done. The day of the interview, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. I sat in front of the camera, recounting my story with honesty and vulnerability. I spoke about the pain of betrayal, the emotional turmoil that followed, and the lessons I had learned about love and trust. I emphasized that infidelity is not just a personal issue, it's a societal one that needs to be addressed openly. As the interview aired, I received an outpouring of support from viewers who appreciated my candor. They shared their own stories of betrayal, and I felt a sense of connection with them. It was cathartic to know that I wasn't alone in this experience, that others had faced similar struggles and had found the strength to move forward. However, as I gained traction in the online community, I continued to wrestle with my feelings for Lisa. I was still angry, hurt, and confused. I had wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I also felt a flicker of compassion for the woman I had loved for so long. I decided to meet her one last time to discuss where we stood. We agreed to meet at a cafe, a neutral ground where we could talk without the weight of our home hanging over us. When I arrived, I saw her sitting at a table, nervously fidgeting with her hands. The sight of her brought back memories of happier times, but I quickly pushed those thoughts aside. As we sat down, the tension was palpable. "Mark, I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I messed up and I'm so sorry. I want to make things right." I looked at her, searching for sincerity in her eyes. "Lisa, I don't know if that's possible. You shattered my trust and I'm still trying to pick up the pieces. It's hard for me to see a way forward." Her eyes filled with tears and I felt a pang of sympathy. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want you to know that I'm committed to making amends. I've been speaking to a therapist, trying to understand why I made such a terrible choice." I nodded, trying to process her words. "That's a start, but it doesn't change what happened. You need to take responsibility for your actions. Not just for me, but for yourself." "I know," she replied, her voice breaking. "I've been so selfish. I let excitement cloud my judgment and I never considered how it would affect you. I don't want to lose you, Mark." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. "I don't want to lose you either, but I can't just forget what happened. Trust is built over time, and right now, I don't know if we can rebuild it." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our conversation hanging in the air. I realized that I still loved her, but the path to healing was fraught with uncertainty. "Maybe we need to take a step back," I suggested. "I need time to process everything and you need to focus on yourself." Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I can change." As we parted ways that day, I felt a mix of hope and despair. I knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but I also recognized that healing takes time. I was still on a journey of self-discovery, learning to navigate my emotions while confronting the reality of what had happened. While my revenge against Jake had been satisfying, it was clear that the true battle lay within my own heart. I had exposed a man for his actions, but now I had to confront my own feelings, my own pain, and the possibility of rebuilding a relationship that had been shattered. The journey was far from over, and I was ready to face whatever came next. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself in a constant state of reflection. The whirlwind of events surrounding the affair, the viral video, and my subsequent confrontation with Lisa had forced me to reevaluate not only my relationship but also my own identity. I had stepped into the spotlight, exposing a famous YouTuber, and in doing so, I had inadvertently cast a harsh light on my own life. The media attention began to wane, but the impact of my videos lingered. I continued to receive messages from people who had faced similar betrayals, sharing their stories and offering support. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone, that others had navigated the murky waters of infidelity and come out the other side. Each message reminded me that my pain had a purpose, that by sharing my story, I had created a space for others to heal as well. Meanwhile, my relationship with Lisa remained complicated. We had agreed to take things slow, to focus on ourselves before attempting to rebuild what was lost. Lisa was committed to her therapy, and I could see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with. There were moments of laughter, of shared memories, and of vulnerability. Yet the shadow of betrayal hung over us, a constant reminder of the fracture in our relationship. One evening, we decided to meet at a park where we used to spend time together before the chaos. As we walked along the familiar paths, I felt a mix of nostalgia and apprehension. "I've been thinking a lot about trust," I said, breaking the silence. "It's the foundation of any relationship, and right now, I don't know if I can trust you again." Lisa nodded, her expression serious. "I understand. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn it back, but I also know it's a long road." Her honesty struck a chord within me. I had spent so much time focused on my pain and anger that I hadn't fully considered her journey. "I want to believe that you can change," I admitted, "but I need to see it in action. I need to know that you're committed to this to us." "I am," she said, her voice steady. "I've realized how much I took for granted and I'm ready to put in the work. I don't want to lose you, Mark." As we continued to walk, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was a chance for us, but it would require patience and understanding. We decided to take things one day at a time, focusing on rebuilding our friendship first. It was a small step, but it felt significant. Meanwhile, Jake Reynolds continued to be a topic of discussion online. His fan base had rallied around him, dismissing my claims and painting him as the victim. It was frustrating, but I found solace in the messages from those who supported me. I had made my point, and while I had exposed him, I also realized that my focus needed to shift away from him and back to my own healing. I began to explore what I truly wanted in life. I took up hobbies that I had neglected during my marriage, such as painting and hiking. I found joy in these activities, in reconnecting with myself outside of the pain of betrayal. I started to understand that my identity wasn't solely defined by my relationship with Lisa. I was Mark, an individual with passions and dreams of my own. As the months passed, I noticed a change in my relationship with Lisa. We began to communicate more openly, sharing our thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. There were still difficult conversations, but we approached them with a newfound respect for each other. I began to see her not just as the woman who had betrayed me, but as a partner willing to learn and grow. One evening, as we sat on the couch together, I looked at her and felt a sense of peace. "I think we're making progress," I said, a smile creeping onto my face. "It's not easy, but I can see us moving forward." Lisa smiled back, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I'm so grateful for your willingness to try. I know I hurt you deeply, and I'm committed to showing you that I can be better." We shared a quiet moment, an understanding passing between us. It was a tentative step forward, but it felt monumental. I realized that healing was not linear. It was a journey filled with ups and downs, and we were navigating it together. As I continued to reflect on my experience, I began to understand that the revenge I had sought was not the end game. Yes, I had exposed Jake, but the true victory lay in my ability to reclaim my life, my voice, and my sense of self. I had taken control of my narrative, not just in relation to the affair, but in all aspects of my life. In the end, I learned that while betrayal can shatter trust, it can also lead to growth and self-discovery. I had faced my demons and emerged stronger, ready to forge a new path. Whether that path included Lisa or not remained to be seen, but I was confident in my ability to navigate whatever came next. As I looked toward the future, I felt a sense of hope. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead, armed with the lessons I had learned along the way. And as for Jake Reynolds, he was just a chapter in my story, one that had taught me the importance of self-worth and resilience. I was no longer defined by my pain. I was defined by my strength, and I was ready to write the next chapter of my life.